So, what if I told you that you could sell jewelry online without a website, without having to use one of the major reselling platforms, and without having to pay any listing fees? Well, it's totally possible. And that's what we're going to talk about today, jewelry friends. We are going to look at the playbook of how to sell jewelry using social media. Now, there's already a ton of jewelry resellers using this as their main way to generate sales and to have consistent, steady income. And I know I've talked about this in a recent live stream, but I thought that the topic deserved its own episode so that way you can always refer back to it later. And if this is something that you've never thought about or something that you are not considering, well, hopefully by the end of today's show, you may want to put this in the back of your mind somewhere or at least keep it as an option moving forward. So, hello, my name is Desiree, and you know that I am your jewelry reselling bestie. And like I said, today we are going to talk about how to sell jewelry on social media. I'm going to give you the complete playbook that maybe you can use this to think about how you make incorporate this into your reselling strategy. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do this, and I'm going to break down all of the options for you. And what I'm hoping is that maybe some of you who are already doing this, maybe you can chime in the comments and let us know how it's working, what you like, what you don't like, and also maybe throw in some tips or some ideas so that way the jewelry resellers who are not doing this can feel inspired and maybe encouraged to give it a try. So before we get into that, I like to always remind you to check out our website. Also, I also want to, I guess, kind of, I'm thinking about, relaunching the newsletter. I know it's been a while since I have um, sent out a newsletter, and I know I've kind of fallen off the track with everything else that's going on. But if you are interested in joining hundreds of other jewelry resellers who have already opted into the newsletter, I'm going to tell you how to do it. All you got to do is head on over to jewelryresellerspodcast.com and you are going to click on, there's a link there. And when you opt into the newsletter, you can get a copy of a free download that I created. And I haven't talked about it in a long while, but it's the 20 best selling vintage jewelry brands that I think all resellers should know. So, yeah, if you would like to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes with me, with my business, I'm going to start sharing that in the newsletter. It comes out every Friday. So I want to thank all of you who have opted in because, like I said, there's hundreds of you, and I didn't even realize that. But I'm going to, like I said, give some more insight, some more behind the scenes, some more sneak peeks and things that are coming up. And all of that will be done through the newsletter. So make sure you sign up if you are not already. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's topic because we do have a lot to cover. So, we are going to talk about how to sell jewelry using social media. And for the most part, using social media as a platform to connect with potential buyers is totally free. You don't have to pay for it, although there are methods and strategies that you could use paid social media ads or paid social media boosts, but you may not necessarily need to do that. Some of the most successful jewelry resellers that I know do not run paid ads. They do not pay to promote their posts or their videos or their live streams. So you don't have to pay to use this method to sell your jewelry. And that's one of the best things I think about having this as an option is that you don't have to deal with listing fees. Now, there are going to be other trade-offs as it relates to doing this, but for the most part, you have a lot of potential and you don't have as many limitations as you do if you are reselling jewelry on sites like eBay, Poshmark, whatnot, or whatever. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this because social media selling has totally changed the game, not only for jewelry, but for everything e commerce. All right, I have talked about how, especially live selling, really is just growing and becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry as time goes on, and it's even predicted to do so even more within the next few years. So you really want to get comfortable with this option if you're not already, because there is a lot of potential there, and you don't have to show your face. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to do that. All right, I'm going to talk about some ways you can make this work for you later on in this episode. But just start thinking about how you can show up on your socials consistently and how you can increase your income doing so. So, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do this. Like I said, I'm going to tell you step by step. I'm also going to give you some things you want to think about, things you want to prepare for. And you guys know I have interviewed a few people who are doing this. Well, I know I've had Doug on the podcast before, and he is probably one of the most consistent jewelry resellers I've seen selling jewelry. Using social media, specifically YouTube, but I know he also sells on Whatnot. So he's an excellent example. If you're not following him, I highly suggest that you do so in case you want to get an idea of how this works and how you can do it. So, but that's not the only way you can do it. All right. And I think that's one of the key things here is yes, you can do live streams, but you don't have to. There's options, there's other ways to do this, and you can make it totally work for you with how you run your business and what fits with your lifestyle. All right. So let's go ahead and focus on what I'm going to call the ultimate playbook for selling jewelry on social media. The first thing we want to think about is your mindset. All right. Now, a lot of us like this idea that we don't need a website. We don't have to be a slave to a specific platform and be limited in any way. But you also have to think about, yes, you are a jewelry seller or a jewelry reseller, but now you have to also think like a social media strategist to some degree. Now, I'm not saying you have to have it all figured out, but you really want to strategize how you're posting and how you're showing up so everything is very intentional and nothing is just being posted at random, hoping for the best, because that's one of the mistakes I see a lot of resellers make. They just randomly post here and there, and then they get disappointed and discouraged when nothing happens. All right, so we have to approach this, like I said, in a very strategic way, or at least a very intentional way in order to make this work. So you want to think about your socials as an extension of your own personal store, or you can even think of it from the sense of having your own personal shopping channel, right? Like it could be your own version of QVC or something like that. You totally can, set it up however you want, but you want to start thinking bigger. You want to start thinking past, oh, this is just my social page. This is just my Instagram post. No, we're going to start thinking about this as a your own platform for creating an opportunity for buyers to get exactly what it is that they want. And it also creates an opportunity for you to really connect and build a relationship with your audience. All right. Because just because they don't buy on the first post that you put up doesn't mean that they're not going to not follow you, maybe not. Maybe they'll bookmark your posts, save your posts, share your posts, whatever the case may be. So it's all about connection and consistency. People buy from personalities, not posts. Now, when I say personalities, this doesn't mean that you have to have this big on screen persona or alter ego, although you could if that really fits with who you are. But it's really just about showing up consistently as somebody who can deliver what potential buyers are looking for. And you can define that in any way that makes sense for you. All right. So, what I want you to do is If you don't already have your social profile set up, please go ahead and do that. And if you do, look at your last 5 posts and kind of assess, what was the message you were trying to communicate with those posts? Were you just sharing something randomly, or were you trying to maybe grow your page? Were you trying to offer some tips or education or entertainment in some way? Think about how you're showing up and how you want to show up moving forward. And remember, you're not just selling jewelry. In a lot of cases, you're creating an experience. You're creating awareness, even about what you have and what maybe you will have in the future. All right. So we always want to keep people curious and excited. Okay, so now that we've got the mindset out of the way and we've talked about making the decisions of how we're going to show up, what exactly it is that we're offering, now we're going to move into the mechanics of how to do this, because everything has logistics, everything has a certain system or things that need to be in place in order to make this work. And that's what we're going to cover right now. All right, so the first thing you need to do is decide how you are going to sell. Are you going to sell on social media via live streams? Or are you going to sell using static posts? You can do both. All right. You can post pictures of your jewelry and you can say, hey, if you're interested in this, send me a DM. Or if you happen to have the listing on eBay or Poshmark or wherever, you can say, follow me on eBay or DM me for the link, or check this out in my Poshmark closet, like whatever you want to do. What I recommend is like maybe you test out a hybrid method of doing both, like maybe doing some live streams and then also doing some static photos and just seeing what you like doing and what you get the best engagement or response with, and then figure out from there, right? Like you may decide that you only want to do photos, but then you do a live showing a preview of some of the things that you have for sale. All right. And you can do it a lot of different ways. I've also seen some resellers say, type claim in the comments if you're interested. Or they will say, like I said, DM me for the link to purchase or for me to send you an invoice, however you do it. All right. So if you want to do the static photos or short videos, that can totally work. But understand that's going to be a much slower pace. That's also probably not going to generate as much engagement as if you went live, but it totally can work, depending on what your schedule is, how much time you got, what's going to work for you. Okay, so that's one option. Now, the other option is live selling. Like I said, you could do a live stream on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever. And you can showcase your jewelry that way. Now, there's several ways you can do this too. You can do a live stream showing jewelry you already have listed somewhere else, or you can actually sell the jewelry in the live stream. I've seen people do it both ways and it works. Again, it's whatever works for you and whatever is going to be, I guess, easiest for your potential buyer, because we don't want to make it too complicated for them to find the piece that they're looking to buy. If there's a link you can drop in, or maybe in your bio, you have a link to your website or your eBay store or whatever. We just want to make it as simple as possible. All right. So I do think that live selling is probably going to be the fastest way. However, that may not be what everybody wants to do. But the thing is with live selling, I think you build trust a lot quicker because people actually feel like they can connect with you. They can ask questions. They can feel like they actually know you. I've even had people say that to me, like on Whatnot and stuff. They say, oh, yeah, Desiree, I feel like I know you, because I show up and I answer questions and whatever. All right, so go live a few times and see what works. Now, the thing is, with going live, you are going to have to stay consistent. And the best way to do that is to show up at a regular time. So if you say, I'm going to do a jewelry show Saturday at 2, make sure you show up Saturday at 2, and maybe you want to show up every Saturday at 2. All right. So again, this is going to depend a lot on what works for you, your lifestyle, your schedule, and all of the things. Now, like I said, I think what's going to be best is if you do like a hybrid model of this. Post some photos on your Instagram or wherever of stuff that you have for sale. And then say, hey, if you'd like to see this, in person or up close, make sure you join my live show coming up tomorrow night, whenever. And you can kind of leverage both and see what works for you. I think that's the best approach. And I think that's probably uh, it's probably going to be the most um, consistent, maybe the way that you can even make the most sales, because I think you're giving people multiple touch points to see the jewelry item. They can see it in a post, and then they can also see it in a live. And, sometimes people need to see things several times before they actually pull the trigger on something, before they make that buying decision. So think about that as you are figuring out what's going to work best for you. Okay, so that is the second part of this. We talked about the mindset. Now we are talking about, you know, how we're going to do it, like the actual method of how we're going to sell on social media. Now, I want to talk about setting things up. All right, because this could be a little tricky, and this could be well, it doesn't have to be complicated, but I know a lot of people get nervous about this part, because some people, they've never sent a PayPal invoice. They don't know how to, get the person's mailing address or their email or anything like that. But I promise you, it is not as complicated as might think it is. It's actually very easy, very simple. And what I'm going to tell you is what the majority of jewelry resellers do who do sell on social media. This is what I have done when I have sold on social media. And so it's not complicated, I promise. Don't feel overwhelmed and don't feel intimidated by this part. All right. So let's talk about how we are going to collect payment, right? So let's say you've decided that you are going to sell on Instagram. Somebody saw a picture of a beautiful piece of jewelry and they want to buy it. And they said, oh, claim, I'm going to DM you, so send me an invoice. That's typically how it works. Now, I want to say 99.9% of the time, the best way to do this is through PayPal invoice. Why? Because it protects you, it protects your buyer, and it is the payment method that most people are familiar with and most people already know how it works. All right, so you do not want to do PayPal friends and family. You don't want to do Venmo or Zelle, although I do know that there are resellers who use those payment methods. But like I said, I prefer the safety and the transparency of using a PayPal invoice. That way, if for some reason the buyer tries to scam or the seller tries to scam, although I know none of us are in, planning to do that, it just gives you another layer of protection that you don't have with some of these other payment methods. All right. So if you don't have a PayPal account, please set one up, because that's going to be the easiest way and probably the most acceptable way for you to collect payment from your buyers. All right. And that's the other thing, too. Most of the jewelry buyers that I know, they already have a PayPal account and they already know how it works. So get comfortable using PayPal, because I promise you it will save you a lot of headaches, now and in the future. Okay, so we talked about payment. Now, What a lot of jewelry resellers do, and this is what I recommend, is that you have your buyers pre-register if you plan on doing a live show or a live stream. And when I say pre-register, basically you set up a Google form or a Jot form, and that's JOT, and they're free. You don't have to pay for them. And basically, you're just going to ask your potential buyers all of the information so that way they can bid on your jewelry during a live stream. And you can also have people pre register just for static posts too, right? You can say, hey, if you're interested in buying some jewelry that I'm going to be sharing next week, go ahead and pre register so that way I have all of your information. And all I have to do is send you an invoice if you see something you like. All right. So on the Google or the Jot form, what you are going to do is you are going to ask for their name. You are also going to ask for their social media handle, depending on where you're selling. So a lot of people have a different name on YouTube than what their actual government name is. So you're going to ask, what's your YouTube handle, your Instagram handle, whatever. And then you're also going to ask what is their PayPal email or whatever their email address is that they use for PayPal. All right. So a lot of people have multiple emails. And so you want to make sure that you are asking for whatever their PayPal invoice email address is. Then you're going to ask for their shipping address. All right. So, because after you get payment, you want to make sure you have their correct address so you can send their stuff. And you are going to ask for their mailing address, their shipping address, whatever. And what I like to also put on the form is the very last question. You can put something like, do you understand that payment must be made within 48 hours um, from the end of the live show or once you claim the item? Otherwise, the transaction gets canceled or something like that. And then just put, do you agree? And they can check yes or no. All right, something to that effect. That way, the buyer understands that you're not going to be waiting for days or weeks on end unless you guys have made an agreement that that's okay. But that really communicates that you are expecting payment usually within 48 hours. All right, that seems to be a reasonable time. If somebody cannot do that, then they need to communicate with you and say, hey, I don't get paid till next week. Can you hold my stuff until then? And then, of course, it's totally fine if they communicate with you. But if you don't hear back from them, then you can just assume that the transaction is canceled and you can relist that jewelry piece or those jewelry items. All right. So, and this is another thing. You want to include, well, see, because I see different opinions on this. Some jewelry resellers include sales tax when they send an invoice, some don't. Um, I have not included sales tax because I think it depends on what state you're in and what state your buyer is in. I'm not too sure. But I've seen some people say that they do charge sales tax when they are selling their jewelry this way. So that's going to have to be a call that you make for yourself. All right. If that's what you need to do, in your particular state or county or whatever, you'll have to figure that out. But I just wanted to throw it out there because, like I said, I know some sellers do collect sales tax, although a lot of the ones I've seen do not. So, again, that's going to be your call. All right. I think that is it as it relates to payment. Now, for shipping, I've talked about this before. I use Pirate Ship because it's cheaper than using ShipStation, which is integrated into PayPal. You don't have to use ShipStation. You can if you want to, if you don't want to go, to a third site. Um, but again, that's going to be your call. All right. I know that a lot of us use pirate ship. They seem to have the best prices as it relates to shipping, and it is very easy to use. You don't have to, it's not complicated at all. So if you don't have a pirate ship account, you may want to set one up. But again, you don't have to do that. You can use ShipStation, which is already built into PayPal. Although ShipStation, it doesn't have as many options from what I remember. That could have changed, since I last used it. But I noticed that when I used ShipStation, and I want to say it was a year ago, 2 years ago, it didn't have all of the options like Pirate Ship did. But again, I haven't used it in a while, so I don't know if it's still that way. All right, so now let's decide where you're going to sell. Where you're going to sell. What is the best platform for you and for your jewelry? Well, here's the thing. I actually think you can make money on any social media platform. It's just a matter of where are you most comfortable and where are you most consistent. All right. Most of the jewelry resellers I know sell on YouTube doing live shows, but that's not the only way to do it. But I think YouTube seems to be the most common and the one that I think people are comfortable with. All right, because they know how YouTube works, they feel like they know you, they subscribe to your channel, and all of the things. So again, you have to figure out what works for you. I've also seen jewelry sellers do this on Instagram. So Instagram could work too. I've seen it on TikTok. I used to be a TikTok shop seller on TikTok, and you can do it that way too. So again, it just depends on where are you comfortable posting content and showing up consistently, and where do you think you are going to find the most buyers who are looking for the specific type of jewelry that you want to sell. All right, so you've got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and I think that's it. Those are the ones I know. All right. So, again, figure out what's going to work for you and where you can show up consistently. Where is it easy for you to post on a regular basis? All right. So, now here's the thing. You have multiple options on the different platforms as well. All right. So, let's say you want to sell on Facebook. Well, you can sell in a Facebook group. You could sell on your Facebook page. All right. So you've got a couple of options of how you do that. I know resellers who sell on their Facebook page and they don't do lives at all. They just post, this is what's for sale. You can put a bid in the comments or write claim or whatever. I also know jewelry resellers who sell in private Facebook groups, which is another option, right? I also know sellers who sell in their Patreon. I guess it's not directly through YouTube, but you can also sell that way. You can also sell via YouTube memberships, right? So you can create private members only live streams and you can sell that way. So again, depending on what platform you're on, you've got several options as to how this can work. And I think too, when you're selling in a private group, it gives you a little bit more control of who your buyers are. Like you can vet them, or you can make them, it's a requirement that they have to fill out the form, the registration form, in order to be allowed into the group. So that way you already have their information. And it could also be, maybe you just do private sales with some of your best buyers or your best clients or whatever. So think again, how do you want to do this? And really consider all of the options available because you have several depending on which platform you're on. All right, so we talked about the mechanics of how to sell on social media. Now we're going to talk about some of the personal responsibility it will take on your part in order to make this work. Because I've seen resellers say, well, I tried that and it didn't work, or, I did this and I only sold one thing, so I don't know if it's really worth my time. So, one of the things we all already know is that being a reseller, and specifically a jewelry reseller, comes with its own set of challenges and unpredictability, like we've talked about. So, the way you can offset that is by making the choice to be consistent and disciplined and really showing up for yourself and for your business. All right. Because there are going to be days where it feels like you are, posting to crickets. You're going to have days where nobody seems to notice anything that you're doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is not working. And I know we're all in this to make money. We all want to make money yesterday. But remember, anything worth doing is worth putting the time, effort, and consistency into in order to get the results that we want. All right. I personally believe that you should treat your content posting like a TV show where it's the same time, same day, every week. So people can expect, to see new content from you, new items that are for sale. All right. Now, one of the ways you can make this easy is you can batch your content. You can batch your photos. Maybe you take photos of, 50 jewelry pieces and you post 5 a day, however you want to do it. Live streaming, you really can't, batch record that because you're doing it live, but maybe you make the decision to show up for 30 minutes every Sunday. That's totally doable. Now, it may take you a little while to prep for the show, but if you just decide, I'm going to show up for 30 minutes every whatever day, and then you get comfortable doing that, then your buyers know when and where to find you. Now, you also want to set realistic goals, okay? Like you may not be able to post 5 days a week, and that's totally fine. But even if you just do a couple of posts a week. Let's say you post every Monday and Wednesday, or every Thursday and Saturday, whatever. Consistency really is the name of the game here. That is the secret of making this work. Showing up consistently, right? And showing up with jewelry that people want to buy. But here's the thing. As long as you're showing up, people are going to be curious as to what you have. That's what I've noticed. I've noticed that, sometimes I have amazing jewelry pieces. Sometimes it may not be that exciting, but I still have people showing up, to my live shows, especially because people just want to see what I have, right? They're just curious. And so you're going to feed into that curiosity and you're going to use that curiosity to your advantage by showing up consistently. Let's see. I have a quote here in my notes. It says, discipline is the bridge between knowing what to do and actually making money. Yeah, so discipline, consistency, if there is anything that will put you over the top or bring you more success or even increase your income, it is those two things. And for a lot of us, that's hard, especially if we haven't been disciplined or consistent up until now. But I promise you, if you stick with it, you will see results. I mean, there's no way that you cannot. And not only that, but even if you don't necessarily achieve exactly what it is that you're trying to do, you're going to get data feedback about what's working and what's not working so you can change things and tweak things as you move forward. All right, so now we're going to talk about some sales strategies, some sales psychology, because a lot of social media is psychology. A lot of it's mental, even though we may not see it as such. It really is. And this is something that I have learned over the years just by, being a social media manager and also learning and having a passion for social media. It really is about the journey that you are taking your audience on. And sometimes that is something that um, triggers a reaction in some way, right? Either they're entertained or they learn something, or they just feel like this is content that's relatable. I feel like I'm not the only one. I feel like somebody finally gets me. Now, you don't have to do that, but you want to leverage some of these little points that I'm going to share with you because at the end of the day, every post that you do should move your follower towards a specific outcome. In our case with this, it is to move our potential audience closer to making a buying decision and then buying from us. But over time, you also may want to just kind of create a community of people who are passionate about jewelry and love to look at beautiful jewelry and love to get ideas about how to style jewelry. Whatever it is for you. All right. So, one of the ways you can do that is to use very emotional language. All right. Now, I'm not saying you have to pour out your heart and soul, although that could work. That could work too. But you really want to create a picture, right? You may want to show a beautiful brooch and say, imagine wearing this on your next date night, or imagine wearing this to your holiday party, or imagine styling this with a beautiful sweater. Whatever. You want to give people ideas that they didn't really know they needed or wanted. So it's about kind of fostering or inspiring an emotion, an emotional reaction, or an emotional connection with your potential audience. Now, every post that you post should do that, and it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily make somebody feel all emotional every time you post, but it's going to inspire them. It's going to give them ideas. It's going to make them want more. And this is something that takes practice because we all have different ways of creating and showing up and posting. And so it will take practice for you to find your voice, your style, and your method of sharing that other people resonate with. And it may take a few weeks, it may take a few months. And even when you do figure out some things that work, you're still going to kind of adjust and change things along the way because you, as a creator, you, as a seller, you're going to change, right? The more you learn about jewelry, you may have some different ideas. You may have new information to share. So remember, it's very, very fluid as it relates to social and social selling because you are fluid as an individual, as a creator, as a jewelry reseller. Now, the other thing is you want to have a call to action in every post. Every single post you do should be inviting your potential buyer to take some type of action, either to send you a DM saying, send me an invoice, or to follow you for more exciting jewelry posts. Right? Whatever it is, we want to tell our followers to do something because a lot of people need to be reminded. And it's not because they don't like what you're posting or they don't like what you're doing. It's just that they've got a million other things they're thinking about and they're scrolling and they see beautiful jewelry and they're thinking about what's for dinner or they're thinking about how they got to go pick up their kid or whatever. Right? So a lot of people need reminders. I know I do. And don't feel like you are spamming or you are harassing or you are being salesy or pushy. That's not what this is about. And you know that that's not your intention. But you do have to be comfortable, inspiring people to take some sort of action. All right. So tell people, leave me a comment if you like what you see. Give this video a thumbs up. Um, like this post if you'd like to see more. Send me a DM if you want to buy. Share this post if you know somebody who may like this or who may be interested. right? Whatever it is. All right. We want to make sure that we are encouraging people to take some sort of action all the time, consistently. Now, if somebody does send you a DM, make sure you respond quickly. I can't tell you, there's been times where I have been interested in something and I have reached out to the seller and I never heard from them. Or I heard back from them maybe a week later, and by then I had lost interest or I had moved on or whatever the case may be. So if somebody does leave a comment, if somebody does send you a DM, make sure you respond right away. I like to say respond within 24 hours, although that may not be, you know, realistic for some people. But I think within 24 hours, you can at least say, hey, thanks for the message or thanks for the comment. Um, I'll get back to you, whatever, just make sure that those people feel acknowledged, right? And so that's how you build and foster and nurture relationships. Okay, let's see. Now, my last point is to really study your results, good, bad, or otherwise, even if they're neutral. Every time you do a post, look at what worked and what didn't. Did anybody like it? Did anybody engage with it? Did you make a sale? Did somebody have a question? You really need to analyze what you're doing because, again, this goes back to social media strategy. Remember, we're not just posting out into the abyss, we're not just throwing something random out there hoping that it's going to work. We need to figure out what does work, right? And if something doesn't work, we need to know that too, because we need to plan for our next post. What do we need to do different? Do we need to take better photos? Do we need to have a stronger CTA? Do we need to post more frequently? Whatever the case may be. And here's the thing too. I think that you should post a minimum of once a day, although I know that may not be feasible for some of you. But remember, you also have tools built within some of these platforms that can help you do that. You can schedule posts. I know you can do that on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. You can also, pre-plan your posts. So if you want to schedule them manually, you have them all, or if you want to post them manually, you have them already ready to go, drafted, and all you got to do is hit publish or go live or whatever. All right, so make sure that you are making this as um, easy as possible for yourself since you are going to be doing this. All right, and you want to keep evolving too. You want to use some of the tools, like I said, that are available on these platforms. I know Instagram just implemented a new, I think, checkout if you sell on Instagram. I'm not sure how that works because I've never sold on Instagram, but that could be an option for some of you. Um, I know TikTok Shop has that, but again, you have to actually create a TikTok Shop. You can't just, do that. But again, depending on the platform you're on, utilize some of the tools that could be available to you to help you make more sales. All right. Let's see. Oh, and I will do a shameless plug here. You can use AI tools like Jewelry Bestie to save time on your descriptions and your posts and your keywords that you may want to use in some of your social media content. All right, Jewelry Bestie is great for that. If you haven't tried it, you can head on over to jewelrybestie.com and you can see how it works. Okay, so I just want to close out with this. Social media has, totally leveled the playing field for us as jewelry resellers. We have so many options nowadays. We don't have to be a slave to any particular reselling platform, and we don't have to limit ourselves with how we show up and how we connect with our potential buyers. I think that is the biggest win here as it relates to what we do as jewelry resellers. So, if this is not something that you have considered, I hope that this episode really gave you some ideas and really inspired you to think about this, right? Because, I mean, I know jewelry resellers who are making thousands of dollars, off of one, live selling show on YouTube. And that's not an exaggeration. All right. You totally can. And you may not start off doing that, but the more you do it and the more you build up your following, it's totally possible. And you can do it probably faster than if you were selling on eBay, right? So, because with eBay, we got to play the algorithm game. We got to, play the list every day game. We got to play the, you know, offers game and the pricing game and all of that. But when you're selling on social media, you don't have to really um, be confined to those particular things. Yes, you still have an algorithm, and yes, you're going to have to price, fair and reasonable, but you're not going to have to worry about your jewelry showing up with hundreds of other, jewelry pieces on the same page, right? Like on eBay. Your listing shows up, but there's hundreds, before and after you on the same page that you're also competing with, right? So you're eliminating that by taking control and showing up exactly how and when and where you want to using social media. All right, so I would love to get your thoughts and feedback, jewelry friends. Let me know. Are you selling jewelry on social media? And because I talked about CTAs, if you do like this particular episode, please make sure you give it a thumbs up or share it with another reseller who may find it helpful and may need this information, because it really helps the channel and the podcast grow and get out to the people who are looking for this information. So I want to thank you so much, jewelry friends, for spending this time with me, and I'll check in with you again really soon.